Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am delighted to introduce today's guests, Michael O'Brien and Shawn Andrews. Michael and Shawn are the co-authors of the 5 Levels of Male Allyship and are on a mission to create inclusive work cultures and help us realize our potential. Michael O'Brien brings an extraordinary blend of experiences from leading in the executive suite and endurance athletics to teaching meditation. Michael's unique perspective on tackling life's complex challenges is deeply influenced by his journey, including surviving a near-fatal cycling accident that he refers to as his last bad day. I had Michael on the show earlier, and we have his story that he told us in that earlier episode. Dr. Shawn Andrews is an international keynote speaker, organizational consultant, and professor at the University of California, Irvine Paul Merage School of Business, and best-selling author of 2 books. She specializes in leadership, gender dynamics, allyship, emotional intelligence, and workplace inclusion. Shawn is the author of The Power of Perception and her newest book, The 5 Levels of Male Allyship. Her insights have been featured in Forbes, the Chicago Tribune, and on NPR, and she has shared her ideas on the TEDx stage. She has worked with more than 100 organizations, including the United Nations, Johnson & Johnson, and Hewlett-Packard, helping leaders build stronger, more inclusive teams. Welcome, Michael and Shawn.
Thank you, Tammy. It's good to see you again.
I know each of you from different parts of my professional life, which was a lovely coincidence. Michael reached out and said, hey, I wrote this book with Shawn Andrews. Shawn, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about the book and about how you came to do this together?
Yeah, the timing of this is great because I was at an event last night for the Healthcare Businesswomen Association. That is how Michael and I met, actually. So going back to 2019, I was president of the HBA Orange County chapter in California. And Michael at the time was president of the New York HBA chapter. And we actually had him out as a guest speaker to our chapter. And what he spoke on was how to invite men into the inclusion conversation. My first book was already out, and I was focused on primarily women and helping women address barriers in the workplace. But I hadn't addressed men as much, and I knew men were important. I remember sitting there listening to Michael speak and thinking, this guy's onto something, because he was talking about specific segments of men and types of men. At the time, we weren't calling them levels like the book ended up being, but he was talking about men are in different segments and describing some examples of men at different levels. And that stayed with me for a good year. Michael and I stayed in touch, and I thought, you know what? No one else out there is talking about levels of allyship. There are other books on allyship and even male allies, but no one's talking about specific levels like this with this depth and segmentation. And I thought it was a really interesting take on it. So I reached out to Michael and I said, Michael, are you interested in writing a book with me on this topic? And he was all in for sure. Yeah. And it ended up being a beautiful project because we are book complementary. So it was nice to have the male and female perspective of writing the book. But also, we live on different coasts. We have different experiences, but we have enough in common where it flowed really nicely. Then I'll let Michael speak more to the cycling part, but we're also avid cyclists. I don't remember who came up with the idea. I think maybe I was you, Michael, about bringing in analogies of cycling is a common theme throughout the book. And so that we had some fun with that as well.
Yeah. So take it away, Michael. Tell us your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. That's a good overview, Shawn. although will be somewhat controversial here, Tammy, on your show.
Oh,
So when Shawn first came to me and say, hey, do you want to write this book? It was late 2024. And at the time I was juggling a lot. And there was a part of me that told Shawn, yeah, I'm all in. And there was another part of me of, I don't know, I'm really busy. And also just taking the pulse of where we were as a society. So I'll take us back to 2015, 2016. And I've been in this work, and I don't necessarily market myself as a culture champion or a diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those were the words that were not criminally charged at the time. So I never really marketed myself. I just felt this was really meaningful work to do. One, for my girls when I first came into it. Then I evolved to, this sort of works for our company. And then it was like, this is just good to do one human to another, right? Making sure that people feel seen and heard and appreciated.
so you're looking back at a time when you were an executive in pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
Right,
And just
right.
like making sense, because in the pharmaceutical industry, we're helping and we're treating patients of all different backgrounds, lived experiences, races. They pray to different people. They love different people, the whole shebang. And we should be talking and reaching out to all of them. And we need people in our company that represents those people, those stories. And I thought it just made sense. And what I felt was, especially coming into 2016, is that men were lumped as a monolith, right? And I don't think any group is monolithic, whether you're talking about someone who is gay or straight, black or white, agnostic or highly religious. There are stratospheres, really harking back to my marketing days. So you have a group of patients, and not every patient is the same. So I also thought as a society here, this is very US specific, sorry to those in other parts of the world that happen to be listening. I thought we were over indexing our energy and our attention on toxic qualities of masculinity. And we were just painting with a big, broad brush. And I was sitting here, hey, not all guys are bad, but it was so easy to get worked up around all men are this way.
Yeah.
Men are the problem. And hey, listen, guilty as charged. We haven't been really all that good. And with our lack of humility and some of our other characteristics have created some of the things that we wrestle with today. So I think there's a better way of reaching men, at least reaching men who are there and want to participate in a greater way, but they just don't know how. And they might be a little reluctant to participate because they don't want to say something that might get them, I guess, today's vernacular canceled, right? Because men are learning a new way in a new language, and we should offer each other some grace as we do this. So I came up with this model, and I was out in California for a cycling trip, and Shawn was like, hey, why don't you do this talk? Because I felt like we can't make change happen in our society and in our companies if only 50% are participating.
Right.
And men were not participating. And we can't blame and shame them into participation. So if we really want to make really big change, significant change, so we don't go to another conference and we look at another McKinsey or Accenture or Bain study that says, hey, folks, we've made some progress. We cherry pick one or two women who've made it to the highest rung of the ladder, and we celebrate. But, oh, by the way, we're not going to have gender parity or pay equity until 2037. To me, that is completely unacceptable. If we really believe in meritocracy, let's get the right people on the playing field and let's go at it, right? And so I was a little pissed off. Part of me still is a little pissed off, but that's good energy to use. And so that's how I came to create the first model. The first model was 7 archetypes. For the book, we boiled it down to 5. And when Shawn came to me, I said, hey, let's do it. But at the time, in 2024, I was like, man, is the society ready for a book around allyship? Because there was so much talk around the pushback around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I sat with that and said, you know what? This is the time. When we were riding the wave of diversity, equity, inclusion from 2020, we were doing a whole bunch. And some of it was good and a lot of it wasn't.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just horrible.
Yeah.
Missed the mark way, like, as they say in the movie Major League, it was way outside, not just a bit outside. So I thought, you know what, this is the time as a way to push back on all the people who are pushing back on DE&I.
Yeah.
I just saw a story with some New York Times reporters saying we have a masculinity crisis in America. I'm like, hello? Yes. And what we try to do with our book is we try to meet men where they're at. And whether you are much more traditional or you're a champion of culture and equity and inclusion, there's something in the book for you to move the peanut down the road. So we get better at bringing everyone together and we let the cream, if you will, rise to the top. And I think that's what anyone wants, is a fair shot at making an impact and creating a ripple effect.
Right. Yeah.
One thing I would add to what Michael just said is that about the same time that he and I came together, I had been doing work in the women in leadership space. But I was coming to that same realization that we are not going to reach any type of parity in our world, gender, racial, any type of parity without men on board.
Right.
And I was actually writing an article at the time for a magazine about men being missing key piece of the inclusion puzzle. And so that came together right at the time that Michael and I came in. And that's why it stuck with me. His levels never left me. And I thought, we need to speak to men. We need to invite men into the conversation. We need to reach men. So that's why the book's called The 5 Levels of Male Allyship. But the book is as much for women as it is for men, because it's meant to help men identify where they may be at, meet them where they're at, and then help them move to higher levels of support and allyship. But it's also helping women identify men that they're working with and how to reach out to them, how to build better relationships, and become allies. So finding and identifying allies for women. And then in every chapter, we also speak to HR leaders, culture leaders, and DEI or inclusion leaders about how to create cultures of allyship, cultures of inclusion in their respective companies. So there's really 3 main audiences for the book: men, women, and the HR or culture leaders.
So tell me more about allyship. What does that look like in day-to-day life? What is it that you're suggesting that people, I don't mean what they do necessarily, but what's the lens they're looking through when they engage as allies?
So from a male perspective, the reality is that I didn't have to write this book. The world was created by folks who look like me and do the things I do, right? And so what we're asking for allyship is, one, we open up our awareness. So many of us are too me-centric, right?
Yep.
In this whole evolution of wellness and in self-improvement and self-help, we've over-indexed on me. What we're asking people to do is open your aperture, almost a photographer, open up your awareness and see if your lived experience isn't like everyone else's. So what I've gone through in my life is much different than someone else. For example, a real classic example, you go into the supermarket, maybe you go into a Whole Foods or a Kroger or what have you, and there's a sign that says, please don't put your groceries in your bag. Right now, a lot of stores will ask you to bring your own bags. Put it in your cart, and then once you check out, put it in your bag. I can go into any store that has that sign and put all my groceries in my bag, in my LL Bean duffel bag or bag.
Right.
But a Black woman might not be able to.
Right.
Or a Black man may not be able to.
Right.
There's really no difference between the two of us. It's just skin color, maybe gender, depending.
Right.
So what we're asking folks to do is open your awareness, see the struggles that they may have that you may not have. And it's not to say that you don't have any. I have my own. I had my own experiences, but we just open up our awareness, right? One part. The other part is courage. We talk about courage is something that's thrown about, like the courage to be in the arena, right? The man in the arena, right? We talk about bravery. We talk about a lot of different things that are, some would say, are more the connotation is more masculine. So we're asking men to be courageous, because to be an ally, to be a champion of someone who has been underrepresented in the past takes some courage in a work environment to say, hey, I want to echo what they just said. I want to amplify their voice. I want to sponsor them. So it takes some of their political capital, which is risky, and risk takes some courage and vulnerability. So we're asking men to step into that. And again, what Shawn's mentioned up front as far as the structure of the book, we do so without any blame and shame. We're not blaming the men and shaming the men for what's been done. What's been done has been done. And there are a lot of reasons why it's been done that way. What we're trying to do is meet men where they're at and meet work cultures where they're at and help them move forward, because we can call it whatever we want to call it, diversity, equity, inclusion, or talent and culture. What it all boils down to, and this is a Peter Drucker type of thing, is culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
And we need to find better work culture, because as Tammy in your work, our work cultures are not healthy enough to solve the problems of today and to solve the problems of tomorrow. And we need everyone involved.
So what I'm hearing up to this point is allyship involves having that awareness, tuning in to someone else's experience, and putting that awareness into action, right?
Yeah, to add to that, a simple definition that we use in the book is it's the ability to use your power and privilege to help those who have less power and privilege. And I like it because it's simple, but privilege is often used very negatively. It doesn't have to be. Power, we all have some form of privilege, and based on our background, our education, our socioeconomic status, our gender, or race, or whatever it may be. But it's using privilege is a very powerful tool to drive real change. And many men who are in leadership roles across our global organizations have that position of power. And so we also talk about using it as a very positive thing. Privilege is not a bad word. It's not a negative thing. They have a really unique opportunity to make an impact, as like Michael likes to say, a positive ripple of change in their organizations. And you could do that through allyship. Actually, just to clarify, I've had many questions like, how's an ally different than a mentor or a sponsor?
Yeah.
They're slightly different. A mentor helps you in your developing your current role.
Right.
A sponsor helps you get to that next role. So they're advocating for you behind closed doors when you're not in the room. They're sponsoring you to get to that next role. But an ally is there the entire time. An ally is someone who steps up for you, both behind closed doors and in public, who's advocating for you, supporting you, cheering for you, who's also developing as well. There's a mentorship component to it. But an ally is there with you the whole time as your support. And we all need allies. Men and women need allies in our lives and in our careers, and especially in today's workplaces, given there's a lot of disruption going on, a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of companies laying off right now. And we're dealing with transformation to AI. We're dealing with economic instability. We're dealing with political instability. So we have a lot of things swirling around us. So given all of that, I think we need allyship more than ever.
What occurs to me, and feel free to push back on me on some of this, but I'm thinking about some of the work that I've done as a coach with more senior level, white collar, males and females, but I'm thinking of a lot of males who have had long careers, and all of a sudden one day they're brought into HR and they're told, we don't need you anymore. And the rug's been pulled out from under them, and next thing they are persona non grata. They've had this robust career and had plenty of authority, power, leadership, and then they're just dropped. And yet maybe they're not ready to stop working. And even if they were, that's not the way they want to go out. And I can imagine scenarios where you have male allyship with other males whose identities have been just yanked from them. Does that fit in with what you're talking about?
I think it does, Tammy. In a way, Shawn mentioned up front, we use some cycling metaphors in our book because we're both cyclists. And so I have a term, as you know, I do, like who's in your peloton? A peloton, for those that don't know, is a group of cyclists in a bike race. Think the Tour de France.
Right.
They all are working together in collaboration. They're communicating. Sometimes a rider's out in front, breaking the wind. Other people are drafting behind, serving some energy. But there's a rotation of that peloton. So there are times where we have to lean on someone, and other times we're the strong shoulder in which someone can lean on us. And I think men can be allies to other men. The reality is, and Shawn brought up AI, as AI comes and whether or not it frees us for all possibilities or destroys humanity, I think one thing is certain is that we need to get back to what makes us human.
Right.
And we as creatures are creatures of inclusion, of being in a old language here, a tribe, but there's a togetherness. There is a need to do it together as opposed to doing it solo. Nothing gets done by ourselves in this world. And so if we can get to the point where we can actually lean on each other, because the world is changing. And I feel for some people who might be older Gen Xers, I'm a Gen Xer or a boomer, and they went into their work life and they're like, okay, here are the rules of the game. Work hard, put in your effort, do 25, 30 years, get a gold watch, which that never happens, but you invest in your 401k, you retire, and easy peasy lemon squeezing, that's your career.
Right.
But then something happened around 2007, 2008 with the financial collapse, and the rules of the game have changed. And it might have changed even before that, but certainly that is a inflection point.
Yes.
And now we have, it seems like an inflection point every 6 months or every 12 months. So things are changing even at a faster rate than when this group of people, men, women, non-binary people, started their careers. And so we need each other to be able to navigate this. The younger generations, Gen Z and stuff, they're going through it in their own way. They're starting their careers in this world. We need each other in order to, the old adage, together we go far, right? We need to find a way to bring allyship more into play and not have it be something that we shy away from, something we actually hopefully lean into because we know this is going to improve work culture.
Yes. And even though the example I just gave had to do with somebody leaving the workplace, I think those kinds of relationships need to happen in a lot of contexts that can then hopefully, because we have more and more people who are being laid off, when they go back to work, they come back in with a new perspective or a different perspective that helps to build a culture like what you're referring to, right?
And we speak to the bro club culture in the book as well, and how even today, some men experience bro club pressure from other men to support other men. And they may be teased for supporting women or underrepresented groups. That still happens. Bro club is alive and well. So that's a dynamic that goes on for some men. But then to Michael's point about, in your question, Tammy, about men supporting each other, Brad Johnson and David Smith, they're authors of The Good Guys, Athena Rising, and they have a new book out, Fair Share. They wrote the foreword to our book.
Oh.
And one of their Harvard articles, they actually showed that men find a community in allyship. So when men come together as allies, they also support each other and find camaraderie and community. So it's very positive for men to step into allyship. So that's been shown. But then we also quote, we talk about in the book, there's a whole host of other benefits that men get when they step up into allyship. Everything ranging from becoming better listeners, better relationships. They're viewed as valued rainmakers in their companies. They become better husbands and fathers even. So there's lots of very positive upsides to men. There's actually, I think, more upsides to men standing up and being allies for women and people of color than there's downside. And then they also find the camaraderie and community as well. So that's also needed more than ever with what men are going through in today's society.
I'm curious. I think about men being allies for women and people of color. And I'm thinking there's got to be, for some people, a fine line between, and I think you know where I'm going, a fine line between being an ally and being accused of being paternalistic or giving some lip service to, or being the one who's handing the people the fish rather than the fishing pole type thing. You know what I'm talking about, right? And so I took this workshop, HR made me take this workshop, and now I'm going to be an ally. So I'm going to walk around the office and help some women out. I know I'm being a little cynical, so forgive me. I'm actually laughing. I think it's true. But I think about how do you really help people understand the really deep importance of what your book is about and what the work is that you're doing, because I could see people hearing this and thinking, why is it the men that have to help the women? The women can stand up on their own. You know what I mean? It still breeds that. Why do the men? It's about what Michael was talking about earlier about the, making the men the bad guys again. Why do the women have to be the ones in need? Maybe yes. The men need the women to ally them. I think it is a both and, but I'm still wanting to get my hands around this ally role and how it really distinguishes itself in that way.
Michael, you want to start that one?
Yeah, so Tammy, that's a great question. So when we think about allyship, we're not talking about heroes, right? And within the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, we've spent a lot of time trying to decide what to call men. More focus on the nouns. Are you an ally, a champion, a mentor? And my feeling is let's try to inspire men to move beyond the noun and into the verb, into action, into being an amplifier, being someone who is sponsoring more action alongside others, not as a rescuer, not as a hero. And so, certainly there are people out there say, I don't need any help. I'm fine. I would say whomever we might be talking about, I think we can always benefit from some support and some help. No one has all the answers. We're all trying to figure this thing out. So I think we can do it in support. And certainly there are men, and we talk about this in the book, there are men who their version of allyship is that they'll put a LinkedIn post up on International Women's Day and be like, check the box, I did it. And some of that allyship that they practice is situational. So they might do it with certain people, but they may not do it with everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to a level of trust, a level of being comfortable. And some behavior by men comes from a place of insecurity. Some of the bro culture does come from a place of insecurity, a place of putting their armor on, getting bigger and louder to protect the gooey center that we all have. As a guy, I'll say that we all have it, whether we care to admit it publicly or not. That's something we're working on through this book. But we can start there. So if a guy out there is like, that's my definition of allyship, I'm just going to put a post up and I'm going to attend like a company session and not gripe about it. All right, we'll meet you where you're at. And then we'll be like, hey, maybe you want to move down the road a little bit further. There's some benefits to you in your career. And we want to, again, meet men where they're at and help them move towards being better champions to all. And as cliche as this is, rising tide lifts all ships, and we want to lift all ships.
I think about your role many years ago. I knew you at the time when you were the president of the Healthcare Business Women's Association, right? And I thought, that's cool. And what even made you think to step into that role?
So it wasn't cool to everyone.
Oh, I'm sure.
In fact, I talked it over with my wife and she was like, I don't think you should do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? I've been doing this informally, formally my whole career, basically, since we had our daughters. And she said, hey, listen, I know you are all about this, but there's a whole bunch of people who are going to be critical. Do we need a guy to do this? We're putting a guy in this role and we're taking an opportunity away from a woman. So you're going to get some criticism. And there was some criticism, and not directed at me personally, but just the concept of a guy in this role.
Right.
Over time, though, people understood, hey, listen, we got to role model the behavior, opportunities for everyone. And for me, health is a primary value. We take our health for granted. And when we get sick, all we want to feel is healthy again. And as a country, we're hurting. We're hurting in so many different ways. And regardless of how much money you have, regardless of who you pray to, who you vote for, what state you live in, there's hurt. And the only way to help us heal, to provide health care to those that need health care, is making sure that we have a number of voices, a diverse perspective, perspectives that are inclusive, so we can show up for those people that need support. It really does come down to that. So I do this work because I know what it feels like to lose your health. And I want to make sure we can do everything we can possibly do to ensure that people have the health that they desire. Because when that happens, then Shawn mentioned it, we show up differently for ourselves and each other. We put goodness into the world.
Yeah.
And Tammy, to answer your question there, was getting your head around why men, it's not men saving women. That's not what we're talking about here. Women absolutely could be allies to men as well. Women need allies, men need allies. But from a pure numbers perspective, there are more men in decision-making positions of power, many more than women. And so from that perspective, there are more men who are in these very positive, privileged positions to step into allyship and help their female colleagues, help people of color and underrepresented groups from a sheer numbers perspective. That's really where we're coming from. So why the book's targeting male allyship. But yes, to your point, we all need allyship. Women could be allies to men. Women could be allies to each other. Men could be allies to each other. We all need that. But we also want more parity in our world, more gender parity, more racial parity, and all kinds of parities. And the best way to do that is to help support men step into allyship.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't mentioned, but the data actually supports this. The data shows that most men want to be better allies, but they don't know what to do or where to start, or they don't have the support to be an ally. Maybe they're teased because of bro club pressures or other things. But most men want to be a better ally. They want to learn. And so that's a very positive thing. But on the flip side, we don't have enough allies. There's a critical lack of support of allyship, particularly for women and people of color. So if you put those two together, here's the one big gap. And then on the other side, you have a willingness to learn and do more. I think there's a real opportunity there. That's why we wrote the book, is to create this framework to help both men and women become better allies, creating more inclusive cultures, and it has that ripple effect for the whole company. So yeah, does that answer your...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so if somebody is wanting that but doesn't know where to start, where would be a good place for them to start?
For a male
to be an ally. I'm thinking for a male. Yeah.
That's actually a great question. So one thing Michael and I created, and it's also unique to the book, we're the only ones out there with, it's an allyship assessment. It's called the Personal Allyship Assessment. And it's free, takes about a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes to 10 weeks. That's about 22 questions. And men or women can take it. But if you're interested in what level you may fall at, it gives you a really good snapshot of that, and then gives you a description of that level. And then you'll see videos. Michael and I actually created videos for each of the 5 levels as well. So depending on what your allyship assessment shows, you'll get a video appropriate to that level. Yeah. And so that is actually a tool. It's a free tool that's available for everyone. So that's probably the best place to start. Another thing that data shows is that men tend to be they think they're better allies than they are. So, and the assessment also helps them get maybe a dose of reality that maybe you think you're a level 5 champion, you might be a level 2 armchair ally, or level 3 no dipper, or level 1 traditionalist, but you think you're a level 5 champion. And so assessment is a great tool that can help them do that. And that's in the appendices of the book. We have that tool. And then we created an ally matrix, which is for women to map their stakeholders or their potential allies.
Nice.
And we recommend maybe just pick your top 3 to 5 potential allies in your company, and you actually rate them on a 1 to 10 scale on the quality of your relationship with that person. You may not even know them, but the quality of your relationship, your communication, also their influence in the company, and their interest in helping you. So you rank them on a few different criteria. Then you create this stakeholder mapping called the ally matrix, and it's a great tool for women to identify allies.
I love that. I love both of those, actually, because I think it gives people something that is personal to them and gives them the next steps that they can take. I think oftentimes people look to their own manager or boss for some of this allyship or some of this type of support or advocacy or guidance. And sometimes it's just not there. I like these tools because it gives somebody options to look more broadly, either within their company or even externally, thinking more broadly about their career. And I know that your book is really focusing mostly on how do you use this to really improve an organization's culture and life at work for people. You talk about the ripples, Michael. This is something that's going to ripple much farther from where I sit.
I like the way you're thinking, Tammy. And I know Shawn does as well. I think right now is the time to really lean into this, whether you're part of a company or just part of a community. We need each other.
Yeah.
And I'll say it again. We need each other. So call it whatever you want to call it. We call it allyship, but if you have a better word out there, use it. And we can start with small steps and do it consistently over time. What that will do is it will bring people together. And I believe there are plenty of opportunities out there. I know the AI thing we've talked about, but there are jobs today that we never, like when the three of us started our careers, we never had any imagination that these jobs would be these jobs today.
Right.
And so we can create, it doesn't have to be a lens of scarcity that we have to view life through.
Totally.
And I'm with people who are a little unsure given what we're going through right now to say, I want to see the world through a full lens of abundance, right? That might be a bridge too far given the uncertainty or instability in today's culture.
Yeah.
But we can find a middle ground where it's not all scarcity and it's not all woo-woo abundance. Right. There's some level of let's find a way to begin conversations, to see each other, to hear each other in a different way, and appreciate what we all bring to our Peloton or bring to the table so we can have better conversations and solve the problems and step into the opportunities, because it's not all problem solving, it's opportunities. We can do hard things, people, and this is the moment to do hard things. So I would say fire it up and let's get some stuff done, make it happen.
And I'm going to add to that and say, not only to solve problems and do hard things, but how about going to work and at the end of the day saying, I had a good time at work?
Yes.
Isn't that a novel idea?
Yes.
I love it when people say, I love the people I work with, or I love my job, or I love my boss. I do come across people like that sometimes, but I'm always a little bit shocked. But it's wonderful.
Yes. It's wonderful.
We need all of that. And to think about, like you said, that middle ground, I think of it as stay open to what's possible that can be created. So what would be the best way? I know people can access your book wherever books are sold. But are there other ways that people can learn more about both of you and your work? Are there places that we can direct them towards? We will have all the information in the show notes.
Oh, great. There's actually 3 things you could do this. So the allyship assessment we talked about, that's a nice touch point.
Yeah.
Actually, Michael and I have posted quite a bit with links to the assessment. You don't even have to buy the book to take the assessment. So that's one thing. And you can connect with us on LinkedIn, both myself, Shawn Andrews, and Michael O'Brien. And then the book is out there. My website would probably be next. That's where I direct folks to. I have a page specifically for this book, as well as my first book. And so there's more details, some excerpts from the book, more data, and then the videos and all that. So my website is drshawnandrews.com.
Okay. That will all be spelled out perfectly in the show notes. So
Awesome.
people will, and if they reach out to you on LinkedIn, I would encourage them to at least send you a note and say that they heard you on this podcast. Is there anything that we didn't point to here that you want to make sure we point to today?
That's a good question, Tammy. I think we covered a lot of ground. Again, I'll encourage, whether it's a guy listening, a woman, non-binary person, a cultural leader, whoever, a political leader or leaders, is this book is a blueprint. It's a pathway to help us find a way to get connected.
Yeah.
We often talk about how divided we are.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's going to take effort to come back together. And Shawn and I are willing to put in the effort and be there with others who also want to put in the effort to come together. We know that there's power in riding in collaboration with one another in our Peloton to make some magical things happen. We hope people hear this message from today, and thanks for bringing us on. And hopefully they'll also join our Peloton in this mission around allyship.
I certainly hope they do. And I will say that your work and your book are the epitome of work from the inside out, because allyship definitely has to come from the inside going outward. So I'm delighted to have had you on today. Thank you so much. And I encourage everybody to get their hands on your book.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Shawn Andrews and Michael O'Brien. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 298. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. Did you know that ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts can help this podcast reach more people? Please help me to inspire more people to move their careers in meaningful directions by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button. Leave an honest rating and brief review. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.